Good morning and warm welcome to all. This is Mr. S.P. Sitarehind. Currently I am going to teach you Charvak ethics. Charvak ethics is the most important topic in Indian ethics GS fourth paper. So please just try to understand it. Let's begin. First we teach to you some ethics terminology, just like what is epistemology, what is epistemology, EPIS, TEMO, epistemology. Epistemology. In Charvak ethics, this word is most important factor for you. If you understand it, then you define this terminology in a detailed manner. It is the most beneficial word for you. So please, epistemology, it is a branch of philosophy. It is a branch of philosophy. It is a branch of philosophy. Base of knowing you can also tell this word theory of knowledge. Theory of knowledge. Theory of knowledge. Theory of knowledge. Epistemological means it is a branch of philosophy. It defines theory of knowledge and distinction between justified belief and opinion. Justified between belief and opinion. Belief and opinion. Understood? Epistemology, it is a word of philosophy. The means of that word is only referred to theory of knowledge are justified between belief and opinion. Understood this point? Okay, next. Metaphysics. Next step, metaphysics. Metaphysics. What is metaphysics? Metaphysics is also a branch of philosophy that deals with the nature of existence, truth and belief. It is also a branch of philosophy. It is also a branch of philosophy that deals with metaphysics. Metaphysics, it is also a branch of philosophy that deals with the nature of existence. Nature of existence. Understood? Nature of existence, truth and knowledge. Truth and knowledge. Have you any problem? So Metaphysics, it is also a branch of philosophy that deals with the existence of nature, truth and knowledge. Got my point? Next is that ethical relativism. Ethical relativism. Ethical relativism. Ethical relativism. It is also a philosophical word. So it is the theory that hold. It is the theory that hold. It is the theory that hold morality is. It is the theory that hold morality is relative to norms. Morality is relative. Morality is relative. The norms of one's culture. The norms of one's culture. Understood? Ethical relatives in the means of this word that hold morality is relative to norms of one culture. Is it define the culture? Next, point 2, you can also say, point 2 में you can also understand in this way, different group of people have a different different group of people, different group of people have a different moral standard, have a different moral standard. Different group of people have a different moral standard for evaluating such as for evaluating such as right or wrong, such as right and wrong. Understood? You can also define in this way, you can also understand it. Have any problem all of you? Okay, next point. Next word, ethical absolutism. Ethical absolutism. There are the basic or fundamental ethical principle. This is the ethical principle. This is the ethical. This is the ethical principle which are true without, which are true without qualification truth without qualification or expectation as time or expectation as to time condition and circumstances condition or circumstances. Understood? Next point, ethical nihilism. What is it? Ethical nihilism. What does it mean, ethical nihilism? It is also a philosophical term, so please just try to understand this point. The view that ethical term such as the view that ethical terms such as right or wrong, such as right or wrong, such as right or wrong, have no meaning or nonsense. Have no meaning or nonsense. Next point, ethical escapism. Ethical escapism. What does it mean? Ethical terms such as right or wrong, such as right or wrong, might have meaning but their meaning can't be established. Can't be established. Have any problem? Next point, hedonism. What is hedonism? Is a form of consequentialism. It is a form of consequentialism. It is a form of consequentialism that approves of action that approach of action, produce pleasure, produce pleasure, avoid pain, pleasure can be things like pleasure can be things like drugs, sex, rock and roll. Rock and roll. It can be include any it can be include any intrinsically valuable experience like reading a good book, Understood? Next point, normative hedonism. Normative hedonism. Normative hedonism, what does it mean? Normative hedonism, pleasure should be people primary motivation. Pleasure should be people pleasure should be people primary motivation. Pleasure should be people primary motivation. Understood? Normative hedonism means pleasure should be people primary motivation. Got my point? Next word, motivational hedonism. Motivational hedonism. The means of motivational hedonism means only pleasure and pain cause people only pleasure and pain motivational hedonism, only pleasure and pain only pleasure and pain cause people to do only pleasure and pain cause people to do what they do. what they do. Understood? The means of motivational hedonism in philosophy. So, it is most important factor to understand philosophical terminology on which that you can write in a constructive manner in mains examinations. So, motivational hedonism means only pleasure and pain cause people to do what they do. The means of motivational hedonism. Next point. Egotistical hedonism. Egotistical hedonism. Egotistical hedonism. This is also a philosophical terminology in GS 4th paper, Ethics. Egotistical hedonism. The means of egotistical hedonism, it required person to consider only his or her own pleasure in making choice. Understood? The means of egotistical hedonism. It requires person person to consider only it requires person to consider only his or her own pleasure, his or her own pleasure, his or her own pleasure in making choice, in making choices. Understood? The means of egotistical hedonism, it requires persons to consider his or her own pleasure in making choices. It depends on individual person. Guys. Next, now the topic is Charvak ethics. Now you can understand very quickly. What is Charvak ethics? What is Charvak ethics? Charvak ethics is a most important topic in GS 4th paper. So please, the Charvak ethics depend on hedonism and metaphysics and epistemological approach. If you understand the three words, then you understand Charvak ethics very quickly. Okay, let's start. Charvak ethics is based on its metaphysics. Charvak ethics is based on its Charvak ethics is based on its metaphysical and Charvak ethics is based on its metaphysical and on its metaphysical and epistemological position. Epistemological position. Epistemological position. Metaphysical and epistemological position. Epistemological position. For Charvak, the sense perception the sense perception is the only valid source of is the only valid source of knowledge. The sense perception is the only valid source of knowledge according to Charvak. Next point. Since matter alone is cognizable, since matter alone is cognizable, by the senses, it is only real, while other non-cognizable, things are unreal. Things are unreal. Things are unreal. Next point. What is not perceivable is non-existent. What is not perceivable is non-existence. Existent. What is not perceivable is non-existence. Not existent. What is not perceivable is non-existent, for the simple reason that it is not perceived. It is not perceived. Hence, Charvak is reject the existence. Hence, Charvak reject the existence of the soul. Hence, Charvak reject the existence of the soul. other words such as other world such as other words such as heaven and hell, heaven and hell, life after death, life after death, life after death, heaven and hell, life after death. Next point. Charvak recognized the existence of the Charvak recognized the existence of the existence of the existence of the four element four elements four elements four elements earth, water, fire, earth, water, fire, earth, water, fire, and air. And air. Next point. These elements are eternal. These elements are eternal. These elements are eternal, eternal and everything, and everything, eternal and everything. Eternal and everything that exist in the world, that exist in the world, that exist in the world. Got my point, Mr. Karen? Understood? Next point. Including the mind and consciousness, including the mind and consciousness, the mind and consciousness, including the mind and consciousness, including the mind and consciousness, are product of these, are product of these, product of these. Material element combined in different proportion, material elements combined, material elements combined in different proportion, in different proportion, in different proportion, in different proportions, just as just as fermented yeast produce fermented yeast produce the intoxicating fermented yeast produce the intoxicating quality in wine. Intoxicating quality in wine. Intoxicating quality in wine. A particular combination material a particular combinations of material combinations of material a particular combination of material element produce consciousness element produce consciousness consciousness. Next, they no need to look upon the soul. There is no need. There is no need to look upon the soul. To look they no need to look upon the soul as dis- as distinct from the body as distinct distinct from the body as distinct from the body. Consciousness is a quality of the material body. Consciousness is a quality of consciousness is a quality of the material body of the material body. It has no existence away. It has no existence away. It has no existence away from body. Away from the body. Next point. There is no evidence of the separate there is no evidence of the separate existence of the separate existence. There is no evidence of the separate existence of the soul from the body. Of the soul from the body. We can't see the self. We can't see the self without a body. Without without the body. Hence, it is a foolish to think that foolish to hence it is a foolish to think that soul would reap the reward soul would reap the reward souls would reap the reward of its act of its act of its act in future life. In a future life. Next point. The worlds of heaven and hell are the worlds of heaven and hell. The worlds of heaven and hell. The worlds of heaven and hell are imaginary are imaginary. The worlds of heaven and hell are imaginary invention imaginary invention are Brahmad preached for the sake of their livelihood of their livelihood. Livelihood. Next point. Religion is a foolish aberration is a foolish aberration religion is a foolish aberration, a mental disease a mental disease foolish aberration mental disease under the dominance of religious prejudice under the dominance of religious under the dominance of religious prejudice under the dominance of religious prejudice. Next, men are accustomed to the idea of men are accustomed the idea of men are accustomed to the idea of another world another world and beyond. Next point. Understood? The existence of God is not necessary. The existence of God is not necessary. The existence of God is not necessary to account for the world. To account for the world. To account for the world. Nature does things itself. Nature does things nature does things itself without any interference by God. Without any interference without any interference of God. Next point. The variety in the world is born. The variety in the world is born. The variety in the world is born of itself. Of itself. Fire is hot. Fire is hot, comma. Fire is hot. Water is cold. Water is cool. Fire is hot. Water is cool. Because it is in the nature. Because it is in nature. Because it is in nature of such thing. Nature of such things. Except nature there is no other. Except nature there is no other cause. There is no other cause. There is no other cause for the creation. For the creation of such wonderful of such wonderful of such wonderful things in the world. Things in the world. Next point. According to Charvak, according to Charvak, according to Charvak, Charvak's sensual pleasure is the Charvak's sensual pleasure. Charvak's sensual pleasure is the summum bonum. Is Charvak's sensual pleasure is the summum bonum. Is the summum bonum. Summum summum bonum. Summum bonum. SUMMUM. Summum bonum. Summum bonum are the ultimate end of human life. Are the ultimate are the ultimate end of human life. End of human life. Wealth, enjoyment, wealth, enjoyment, wealth, enjoyment are the object of human life. Are the object of human life. Wealth, enjoyment, human life, wealth, enjoyment are the object of human life. Next point. The fourth Purusartha. The four Purusartha. The four Purusartha, Dharma, Arth, Kam and Moksha. Artha, Kama and Moksha. Dharma, Arth, Kam and Moksha. The Charvak school accept only Kama. The Charvak ethics. The Charvak ethics. The Charvak ethics are schools. The Charvak ethics are schools accept only Kama. Accept only Kama. Accept only Kama. Next, sensual pleasure as the end of life. Sensual pleasure. Sensual pleasure as the end of life. As the end of life. Sensual pleasure as the end of life. And earth. end of life, and earth. Wealth as means to realize the end. Wealth as means wealth as means to realize the end. To realize the ends. Realize that ends. Next point. Dharmoch are ignored altogether. Dharma and moch Dharma and moch are ignored altogether. Are ignored all together. All together. Eat, drink, be merry. Eat, drink, be merry. Eat, drink, and be merry. Eat, drink, and be merry. Is the ethical principle of the Charvak. Is the ethical principles of Charvak. Ethical principle of Charvak. That is the end of all. Death is the end of all. Death is the end of all. There is no other world. There is no other world. There is no other world than his sensual world, than this sensual world. Sensual world. Next point. Once the body is reduced to ashes, once the body is once the body is reduced to ashes, reduced to ashes. Once the body is reduced to ashes, there is no hope. There is no hope of it coming back. Of it coming back. So every person should enjoy every person should enjoy the pleasure, should enjoy the so every person should enjoy the pleasure of this world before his life before his life comes to end. Before comes to end. Charvak maintained an unqualified Charvak maintained Charvak maintained an unqualified ethical hedonism. Unqualified ethical hedonism. Ethical hedonism. Unqualified ethical hedonism. Next point. Pleasure and pain are the basic fact of life. Pleasure and pain. Pleasure and pain are the basic fact of life. Are the basic fact of life. Pleasure and pain are the basic fact of life. One should not miss the pleasure. One should not miss the pleasure of this life with the false hope with the false hope of a better future life, of a better future life. Pleasure can be rejected on account of its pleasure can be rejected pleasure can be rejected pleasure can be rejected on account of its on pleasure can be rejected on account of its being mixed together with pain together with pain of if person wants to enjoy if a person if a person wants to enjoy if the person wants to enjoy the pleasure of the pleasure of enjoy the pleasure of eating fish pleasure of eating fish he she must bear he she must bear he and she must bear the pain of the pain of removing the pain of removing its bone the pain of removing its bones Sarv Darshan Samagra says Darshan Samagra says Sarv Darshan Samagra says that Sabdarshan Samagra says that while life is your while life is yours live joyously joyously none can escape death none can escape death none can escape death searching eyes death searching eye when once this frame when once this frame of on of owns the one how shall it again return how shall it again return how shall it again returns this line is taken from Sarv Darshan Samagra says that while life is yours live joyously none can escape death searching eyes When once this frame of owns they won, how shall it again returns? That is the important course. Please keep in mind. Next, Charvak ethic stand for Charvak ethics stand for Charvak ethics stand for sensualism and selfishness. Stand for sensualism, sensualism and sensualism and selfishness. Charvak ethics stand for sensualism and selfishness. Sensualism and selfishness. Sensualism and selfishness. Since instinct and passion, since instinct and passion, instinct since instinct and passion, instinct and passion, since instinct and passion are nature's legacy, are nature legacy, are nature legacy of human beings, of human beings. Next point, pleasure should be pursued in pleasure should be pleasure pleasure should be pursued pleasure should be pursued pleasure should be pursued in comforting with in comforting with pleasure should be pursued in comforting with dharma, conforming with dharma, conforming with dharma, Kam Sutra rightly pointed out. Kam Sutra rightly pointed out. Kam Sutra rightly pointed out. Pointed out. Kam Sutra rightly pointed out. Pain is not mere biological being. Pain is not a mere. Pain is not. Pain is not mere biological. Mere. Pain is not mere biological being, but also a rational, but also a rational and self-conscious being. Self-conscious being. Self-conscious being. One should transform the beastly pleasure. One should sorry. He should transfer the he should transform the beastly pleasure. The beastly he should transform the beastly pleasure into human pleasure, into human beastly pleasure into human pleasure by means of self-control. By means of self-control in harmony with Dharma and Earth. Dharma and Earth. Beastly pleasure. Self-control. Next point. The pleasure of pig are the pleasure of pig. The pleasure of pig are certainly not the same as the pleasure of philosophers. Thanks so much all of you. Next topic I will tell you land corruption or money laundering. Next day. Thank you so much once again.